Welcome back, everybody, to Brown Bag Bets, powered by BetSperts. We are your daily dose of quick hit handicapping and sports betting picks. I'm Alex Christensen, and Andy's not here today, folks. It's finally, we broke his streak, his first missed episode. He is on his way to Boston to have some fun. He should be back tomorrow. But joining me, as always, Andy's cohort, Andy's partner. I don't know if life partner is really the right thing, but you guys really have a chemistry there. It's amazing. His buddy on the deep dive. I'm sure if you follow us, you of course know Drew Whale Capper Dinsick. You might call him Whale. You might call him Drew. You might still be transitioning and calling him Droyle. We have options. How are you this morning, Mr. Dinsick?
I'm doing well, man. It's great to be on. Appreciate the invite. Hopefully, I wasn't like the 10th call as a co-host, but even if I was, it's still exciting to be here.
I'm sure you were very high on Andy's list. Luckily, he takes care of all that stuff. And apologies for being late. The other reason we are late is that Andy usually sets all this stuff up, and it was kind of a mess getting everything logged in. But here we are. And let's start with, my strength, I think Drew's strength. We'll start in the National Basketball Association. And before we get to tonight's slate, I was just curious, we're barreling, kind of stumbling, bumbling, and fumbling, if you will, to the end of this regular season. Yes, the end of the NBA regular season is usually very messy. This one seems to be particularly so. In general, as an NBA handicapper, how do you approach the end of the season? And is this year markedly different in any way?
Well, when I see a game like Suns Cavs last night, and I know that the Cavs can't possibly afford to win the game, I'm just blind firing the whole fourth quarter Suns at any price. And then to watch them go to overtime and still cover the 12.5 was hysterical. I feel bad for anyone that Cavs plus 12.5. That's probably the worst beat I can remember in the NBA in as many years as I've been betting NBA. I remember last year, and this is burned into my brain, the Hawks Heat, December 6th-ish of 2019. I guess it was 2019. Trae Young having a great game. I was on the Hawks +8. Down the stretch, the Heat, barrel a couple threes, tie the game, send it to overtime, and the Hawks did not cover the +8 in overtime, and that will live with me forever. I have no doubt that people who bet Cleveland Cavaliers plus 12.5, they might want to call it a season, because I don't know how you get back up after that.
I'm trying to find the tweet I saw earlier. I think this is the only time a team has not covered a double-digit spread or something like that in overtime. It is pretty spectacular.
In 30 years.
And that's what you have.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about, like you have these teams, you almost have to skip a lot of these games from a motivation perspective. Like we had an Orlando-Houston game the other night. I don't know what you do with something like that. Like you said, Phoenix and Cleveland. I've liked betting on Cleveland. They were a good team for me the first half of the season, but whether it be the ultimate tank move of just putting Kevin Love on the floor. I mean, he's just doing spectacular things every night, but not really in a good way. You have to kind of avoid those teams, I guess. Is there anything else you're doing? I've been trying to stay away from totals. The few that I have bet haven't been so great, but anything else you're doing strategy-wise here at the end?
I've been taking some unders when you have just the two dog shit teams playing each other. those tend to be ugly. And a lot of it is just, when nobody really wants to win. They're not pushing pace in the second half. It just gets ugly. When you have a situation last night where you have Raptors, Clippers, and the Raptors pretty clearly weren't trying to win that game, but they were still they have competitive juices flowing. They're sometimes valued back in the first half of those spots. I've been doing that a little bit here and there. But the true angle that has been the most profitable for the last month, plus now, really the entirety of April through into May here, when a team accidentally wins or gives you a full heart perform, and they're completely out of the mix. Like let's say the Magic the last time out, Magic come away with an impressive win against the Pistons. You can pretty much write it in pen that their next time out, they're not getting off the bus, especially if it's against a contender. So like tonight, overnight at least, I looked at Celtics -10, didn't hesitate, fired away. I really have a tough time seeing how the Magic compete in this spot. And I think, Celtics, even without Jaylen Brown, they got Kemba Walker back. Tatum's going to play. This should be like a 20-point kind of game.
Let's get into tonight then a little bit. You like Boston at 10. It looks like that's drifted out to 11. Where are you drawing the line on that one?
14.
So did you play the 10 or did you, I guess it's overnight. You can't sell points as much. Did you get up this morning and look to maybe bet like a 13 plus something?
I
Are you
actually,
happy with your
I
10
misspoke.
position?
I have 10.5 overnight from a
Okay.
handful of places. Yeah. And that's fine with me. I'm not going to continue to rebet this. There's other fun plays on the board that I think have a little more value.
So why don't we get to one of those? And actually, before we do, I guess we'll take our licking here. Andy's not here, but I guess he's sitting in front of his phone or whatever. What a mess that Nets game was. And I'm sorry, Andy, we can't get you your money back, but apologies there. It was just an ugly game. The Nets, they look, dysfunctional. It's kind of what I've been saying and waiting for as this comes together and they're playing more minutes. And I think you saw it specifically with Kevin Durant. I know you noticed that he was kind of turning the ball over and maybe pressing a little bit. What did you see in that game last night?
I thought the strategy of the Milwaukee Bucks was good. In hindsight, I had a lot of the telltale earmarks of a lot of regular season Bucks from the last couple of years where they just cared more about the regular season win than their opponent. Obviously, I think to this point in the season, we have seen the Nets step up their level of play when they've gone up against the best in the East and the West. And I expected more from the Nets. Obviously, that's why I played them. but the Bucks wanted it more last night, and it just eyeball test. They were more physical. They were more aggressive on the offensive rebounds. They were more aggressive getting to the free throw line. And on defense, they were testing the refs. They were basically like make the refs call the foul. Brook Lopez was more physical than I've seen him in a bunch of games. Drew Holiday was getting physical with with some of the guard, some of the defense he was playing on their guards. Overall, I was just impressed with the physicality that the Bucks took to the Nets, and I would look. I would expect that if that's our 2-3 matchup, that's how the Bucks probably come out of the gate, like just trying to be physical, trying to make the refs call an honest game. But ultimately, the 16-1 run in the fourth quarter put it away for the Bucks. And during that stretch, Durant came in off the bench. He was the primary, offense was running through him, and he was completely checked out, sloppy, not in the game, looking at the ref every time he created a turnover like it wasn't his fault. It was brutally bad body language. And I think the Nets need James Harden back pretty badly.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see. And I like what you said about the physicality there. In the chat, we were going back and forth a little bit about maybe the dubiousness of some of the calls, but you have to put the referees in that position. It's not just them being uncomfortable. It's you going out there. It's, what the Knicks used to do with Pat Riley. I know the basketball's changed a lot since then, but the whole idea of, if everybody fouls there and just lending towards being more physical. And I wonder, that's what you see in the playoffs. And I wonder how that's going to translate. But, getting back to tonight, you said you had a couple other looks. You gave out Boston here. One of my favorite looks was I've got the Grizzlies right now, -3 against Minnesota. I think that's maybe a little bit of an overreaction to the Timberwolves' play lately. The Grizzlies are a great team for me. I love this matchup. They have guys that can slow down Karl Anthony Towns. They're not going to be worried about D'Angelo Russell coming off the bench. So happy to grab the 3 there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I looked hard at that one. I swerved just because I'm a little concerned about the funk that Ja Morant has been in. I don't exactly know why he's not why this sophomore season has been such a lackluster kind of year for him. I've really loved his promise in year 1 and even through some portions of year 2. But yeah, I know that looking at that line on the open, it was Grizzlies or nothing. So I like your look.
Yeah, Morant, I think, is experiencing kind of what happens to pitchers almost in Major League Baseball and quarterbacks in the NFL. Once teams get some tape on you, they have some better ways to attack you. And I think he's working his way through that. And I think that they'll be fine. Again, just a really nice matchup on my numbers like this as well. So what else do you have tonight?
I took a flyer on the Atlanta Hawks against the Phoenix Suns. Little bit of a fatigue spot here for the Suns, having gone to overtime last night against the Cavaliers, and then getting right on a plane, traveling to Atlanta. Atlanta is a little bit rested. Oh, that's up to Hawks -1. Oh, nice.
That's what I saw recently.
Oh, it's been flip flopping. I got 2.5 last night on Bet Online. It's come down to, as you see, pick 'em -1 +1. It's going to bounce all day probably here. There's a possibility that we hear some surprise rest for the Phoenix players having played into overtime last night again. And the Hawks, they're like, if you look at their schedule overall, like this doesn't look like a rest spot, but you got to remember that a bunch of their key players missed a ton of the middle of April. And they're getting DeAndre Hunter back. Trae Young really has not logged the minutes post All-Star break that a lot of these other guys who are primary ball handlers have. So he's a little bit fresher. And really the Hawks, I went to war with the Hawks against the Blazers on Monday. They impressed for me. They had another gear that they didn't even need, I felt like. And presumably tonight against the Suns, if the Suns are playing well, the Hawks can find that gear and get this win.
I like that a lot. My other pick tonight, the Knicks is an underdog. Grab the 3.5. I'm seeing a 3 right now. Either one of those numbers are fine. I have this game pretty close to a pick on myself in Denver. Yes, the Knicks are better at home, but they continue to bring a ton of intensity. It looks like Jokic is probable, so he's not feeling 100%. I think the Knicks are going to bring a lot of heat here, so happy to grab them at plus 3.5. Did you have an angle on this one?
I love that one as well. This was probably the first one off my card. I only played 3 today, and that one was the one that got chopped. The only reason is I was trying to sell the top on the Knicks last couple of times out, and I got burned. So I'm not now going to flip and back the Knicks and watch the top come in. So I like your look. If you've got a good feel for how that team is playing, Flo defensively has been amazing. Their defense in general, and Thibodeau, all the credit in the world to Thibodeau. Their defense has been great this year, and this is a pretty solid defensive matchup going up against a Denver team that only really has Jokic to create shots for them. Everybody else, he's really the only ball handler right now. It showed versus the Lakers a couple nights ago, and the Nuggets are going to leak some oil here down the stretch.
Yeah, I think the Knicks match up nicely again here. They have the length to keep Jokic at bay, and then I think the Knicks guards are going to be great tonight. Rose, quickly, all those guys are going to come in and I think have pretty big nights. Now you have one more look. What was that?
Yeah, so favorite look of the day actually, and I want your opinion on this because I haven't heard really anyone talk about this game. But I took the Indiana Pacers. I laid the 6.5, and I did it without hesitation. The Sacramento Kings last night were monumentally disappointing in a win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder, you really can't put a number on how bad the Thunder are right now, and yet the Kings still just managed to eke it over the line. De'Aaron Fox not going to be in the game for the Kings. That is huge. We've seen the Indiana Pacers defense has been absolute trash for going on 3 weeks now. But they're a fully healthy squad, and most of the defensive woes came against like the absolute top tier and NBA offenses. And the Kings without De'Aaron Fox are not that. So I am not especially worried about the how many points they're going to give up. When on the flip side, the Pacers offense is clicking on all cylinders right now. I think this could be like a 20-point kind of game. My fair price is 7.5, so I laid the 6.5, and I think this is a nice spot.
I think you're right. This is the spot. If you're going to take this, it's Pacers or pass. I was pretty close here, but Indiana has just been a total bet against team for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just not excited to bet on them without Brogdon. I think he makes a big difference. He keeps everything under control. He's a nice sort of a balancing effect there, and their defense without Turner has just been atrocious. So I think you're right. I mean, Sacramento's got nobody left. Fox is gone. Halliburton's gone. They're now playing Bagley again for some reason. It's a mess there. It's a great rest spot to fade them, but do I have to put my money on the Pacers? Because you're right. My numbers are the same thing. Like I make this 7, almost 7.5. And, if I tweak it, like if Turner somehow is in, it looks like he's out, or Brogdon's in, and this still hangs around 6.5, 7, I'll probably join you. But I'm not going to feel good about it.
Those are the ones I like, though.
Those are. Now while I've got you here, we'll touch base quickly. We wanted to take a look at some of the futures we've got here. Hold on, I got to get that logo out of the way. But we'll start on the left with the Western Conference, which all of a sudden to me seems like the kind of more up in the air. As I start to look at the East, I think we have a couple teams. We'll get there in a second. As you look at some of these numbers, Drew, do you see any value here at this point as we start to, get closer?
There ought to be value in the West because that Lakers number is just mad inflated. But I do still believe that is a 2-team race ultimately between the Lakers and the Clippers. As hard as I've tried to make myself make a case for the Jazz Suns, I just can't see it considering how inexperienced they are and considering that both teams really lack the superstar talent that you need to go toe to toe with a LeBron or a Kawhi in a 7-game series. Ultimately, that's how I still see that is the end. That is sort of the the trump card for a best of 7 NBA series. Who's your best player? And almost certainly whoever the Jazz and Suns get matched up against, even if they end up against the Nuggets, they're not going to have the best player on the floor. So I think I got to stick with Lakers or Clippers in the West. I've kind of taken a long road to getting to just don't overthink it. The Nets are the best team in the East. But performances like the last 2 out against the Bucks are shaking my confidence in that pretty significantly. I know you are not a long-term buyer in these Nets. I'm surely not playing them to win the championship. I think Lakers or Clippers get to the title, get to the finals. They're your title favorites in my mind. But in the East, it's tough for me to see who can go toe to toe with them offensively out of any of these other teams that are going to be in the mix here. So I think I got to stick with the chalk here and say Lakers Nets. And at those prices, you're not getting value on either.
It's tough. I'm trying to avoid the Lakers, but you have to respect LeBron. The Clippers are very good, but I would want a better number there. The only one that sticks out to me is Phoenix. Chris Paul has been healthy all season. Knock on wood, if he can continue to be healthy, he is not going to be afraid of the Lakers. Devin Booker is going to be able to score as many points as anybody in those games. And as bad as DeAndre Ayton is on defense, Anthony Davis is not going to take him down into the post and make him really work and attack him in the ways he really struggles. The Clippers don't have kind of big guys like that either. So Phoenix was the only name that kind of stuck out to me. Utah, I've thrown out. I mean, their 2 guards are injured. They need that team to be at 100%, everything clicking, because they're going to be running into teams that have 1, if not 2 players better than their best player every night. And then everybody else you can sort of cross off. I mean, it's a shame Murray's out because this would have been a really nice year for the Nuggets to do something. But maybe next year. And then, the East Coast, you talked about it. I don't believe in the Nets. I think that what we saw last night is going to be indicative of what is to come. We'll see if James Harden gets healthy. I think they really need him. I think that's what was missing last night, was that third presence on the floor. They did nothing to address rim protection. There is not one single person on that team that is really, a threat to stop teams at the rim. DeAndre Jordan has been okay, but you're going to need 30 minutes from him a night in the playoffs. You get into 7-game series against this Bucks team and against my Philadelphia 76ers, which I've tried to talk myself down over and over again, poured water on myself over and over again, but I'm ready. I'm done. I've been telling everybody for the last week, it's time. We need to lock in and focus as a city. This is the best chance that we've had to win a title since Allen Iverson. You look at what the Sixers have. For starters, Joel Embiid is the trump card. He is arguably the worst matchup of any player. He's not the best, but there's no team really here that has anything to slow him down. And I would like the Sixers to have another shooter or two. But when you get to the playoffs, if the Sixers can control the tempo against the Nets, do a lot of what Milwaukee did last night, you take Ben Simmons, you have him chase Kevin Durant around, you put Thibault on the floor and tell him, you know what, you're probably going to foul out. Just make sure they're good fouls. Have him chase around on Kyrie, and then try to let James Harden hopefully come back on a not-so-great hamstring and dribble a lot, to really try to grind the game down. I think that Philadelphia and Milwaukee honestly both have value here, simply because I don't know if the Nets, ever get to that top level, and if they do get to that top level, I mean, is it really twice as good as what the Bucks have at their best or the Sixers have at their best? I mean, I understand that the Nets probably should be the favorite to win the East. I'm willing to admit that, but minus 115 seems
price does
like
seem
an exaggeration.
So I guess if you're a Sixers backer, if you're a Sixers fan, who do you want in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Nets and the Bucks?
I want the Nets. I think that's the better matchup for the Sixers. I want the team that's been in. Well, think about it. Think about it this way. Would you rather have the team that's been injured all year, the team that has no cohesion? You got 3 guys that literally haven't played together all year.
Yeah, I would rather.
And a first-year head coach.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I would rather the team, though, that has shown a propensity for their offense disappearing in big moments, which is not what the Nets have. I mean, the Nets, honestly, the matchup between the Nets and the Sixers is like best defense versus best offense, and best offense almost always wins those type of head-to-heads, even in the playoffs. So it's tough. If I'm the Sixers, my bullishness depends on the Bucks taking out the Nets in the semis. But I do agree, like the Sixers price is wrong. They 4-5 matchup is going to be Hawks Knicks probably. And yeah, neither of those teams is going, going 7 games with the 76ers, which is really what you're worried about because Doc Rivers in game 7 loses his mind. But the 76ers, I think, can get to the Eastern Conference Finals with minimal damage. At which point, I think you want the Bucks coming off of a knockdown, drag out 7-gamer against the Nets.
All right, so I'm with you. I'm starting to scoop up little Sixers positions here and there, despite my desire to not want to bet on my team and just enjoy it. Are there any numbers here that you like? Is there anything you might sprinkle a little bit if you didn't already have a position?
I'm going to think harder about the 76ers number at 425 because, like I said, like they're scheduled down this. A couple of factors. They're scheduled down the stretch is super easy. The likelihood that they lock up the 1 seed is pretty high. And that's massive because path is going to end up being everything here. If you're going to try to convince yourself that plus 425 for the East is a favorable number.
All right, let's jump into, before we wrap up here, we've got some tennis. Unfortunately, nothing today. The way the tennis schedule is going, just about everything is in play. We thought it might be good to get ready for the French Open. We'll start with the men's odds here. We've had a couple clay tournaments. This Rafael Nadal number is starting to move against him. I mean, this was, I think, in like the minus 150 range a couple of weeks ago. So what do you think of Rafa here at the top? And then do you see any value in anybody else now?
Yeah, my fair price for him before we saw any of the clay was about minus 125. And it's come down as well. Some of that is because of his level. Other factors include how some of these other competitors are playing. In years past, this was a 2.5 player race. You had Nadal, Djokovic, and then team, albeit he hadn't won a slam and wasn't likely to win, best of 3 against Nadal in Roland Garros. Team hasn't really fired many of his bullets so far this clay season, largely because he's been injured. He was fine yesterday, but he really wasn't up against much of a test. This trip, he has played well in the past in Madrid. This is going to be a pretty important tournament for him to prove that he has, some sort of level of fitness. That he can make any kind of noise at Roland Garros. Djokovic, I would not expect to reasonably be able to beat Nadal head to head on clay. So the fact they're probably going to be on opposite sides of the draw, I'm not going to have much exposure to Djokovic, but the 2 names that pretty clearly stand out here are Stefanos Tsitsipas and Andrei Rublev. 2 players who have made huge, meaningful steps forward in their progression this year during the clay season. Rublev had an incredibly impressive head-to-head victory against Nadal at Monte Carlo. That was kind of a career definer, in my opinion, because he has typically gone up against the best in big moments and been on the losing end, most notably against Daniel Medvedev. But he goes head-to-head against Nadal in Monte Carlo and beats him on clay. That was pretty massive victory for him. He couldn't back it up with the title against Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas obviously won that final. But then Tsitsipas going into Barcelona into the final and not fighting back from match points down to Nadal was wildly impressive. No one does that. Like that is extremely, extremely tough to fight off match points and then take that to a 3rd set. And then realistically, he had opportunities in that third set to come out on top. That was a coin flip match. And if you're coin flip against Nadal in Barcelona on his home court, that absolutely makes you a contender for Roland Garros, in my opinion. This is probably the last year that Rafa wins the French. That's the sense that I'm getting. These guys, Tsitsipas and Rublev, and even team, still has room to grow. They're coming on hot, and even Sinner, Yannick Sinner is a promising young player on clay as well. These guys are going to eat up more and more of the market as we go forward in years to come. Nadal probably knows this. I would expect Nadal at some point kind of save some of his bullets here in these next 2 tournaments. And then, this is knows this is his last hurrah at the French Open. So I'm not going to at the end of it all, I'm not going to fade Nadal here unless I get an especially favorable price, but I'm going to do it in match, depending on the matchup, depending on the weather. The weather at Roland Garros for Nadal matches is hugely important. Never forget that. If it is 100%. A cool if it's a cool, rainy day in Paris, and it's been cool this spring, if it's a cool, rainy day in Paris, then Tsitsipas is live, Rublev is live, Djokovic is live, team is live. If it's a dry, warm day, then no one's beating Nadal on Philippe Chatrier.
And I can't wait to see the draw here. That's kind of the only thing holding me back on some of these numbers. Like if team's healthy, 7-1 is a nice number. Tsitsipas, that's a shame. We missed out on the best of that. Rublev, if he's in the right spot at 20-something to 1. So we'll see how the draw shakes out. Is there any of these numbers you like enough to bet right now, though?
I wouldn't mind taking a swing on Rublev at 24-1, just considering where he's probably going to be in the draw. He might, the way it will likely shape up, you're probably going to get Rublev on top with team in Q2. And then the winner of the team Rublev match goes up against Djokovic. And Rublev can beat team. Rublev can beat Djokovic. And then you might have him at 24-1 against Nadal in the final, which would be pretty interesting. So that's the only one that I would even consider. The rest of those have gotten way too short.
Yeah, I agree. Let's jump into the women's side of the draw. We saw here, Joel loves Swiatek. She is the favorite here. Actually, she's not the favorite. Last time I looked, she was the favorite. Halep is the favorite here. It might just be different.
Now, what is going on with that?
That's just, it's a name. It's a name price. Halep has looked like a mess. I mean, she hurt her shoulder in Miami, has really struggled, has gotten beat by some of got smoked by Sabalenka. And I think that was Barcelona. And then Madrid the other day loses in 3 sets to Elise Mertens in a match where I described as would be very competitive. I mean, Halep usually beats Mertens pretty cleanly. So I'm definitely worried about her. As much as I love Swiatek, I don't know if 5-1 is a good price. So as you start to look at this list, I mean, with the top names maybe a little out of whack, do you see anything down there at the bottom?
Oh, man. I guess I'm curious, what's your general take on some of these women's clay form? Because Halep is out of form for me. She is way off her peak, the way that she's playing right now, which means there is no way she should be in the 5-1 ballpark for this tournament. Swiatek caught lightning in a bottle last year. In the fall. I'm not doubting her ceiling is as high as it is. But that was pretty once in a lifetime kind of level. Like she played as well as we saw peak Steffi Graf play in like 1988. Like that, you have to go back that far to find that dominant of a performance there. And I have a very tough time thinking Swiatek can repeat that, especially considering how stacked this field is. Out of those numbers, Muguruza at 750-1 is interesting to me, just because earlier in 2021 she looked like she had a pretty high ceiling in terms of her peak form. What have you seen form wise from these women as we've kind of come into clay season?
Yeah, Halep's looked rough. Swiatek was playing well, but ran into Barty, and I kind of agree with Patrick here. I think the best number on the board might be Barty at plus 750. I don't understand, given her form. She's had success. She's won the French Open before. She's, I think, 3-6 this year in terms of tournaments. She's entered and won 3 out of 6. So that's a pretty good hit rate, and is still cruising this week. So I think she should probably be the favorite. She's in great form. Muguruza, actually, I would slow down there a little bit. She did not look great to me in her first couple clay matches. I don't know if the slower surface is good for her at this point in her career. Okay. I would definitely want a better number there. Osaka,
do you know why Muguruza skipped Madrid, right?
I believe, yeah, she did. I think she was in and then pulled out. I'm trying to remember, but she didn't end up playing this week.
All right, well, that throws a lot of cold water on that then.
Osaka seems to be more interested in taking pictures in pink hair. Serena Williams, I guess, will probably show up at this point in her career. She's not going to win the French Open. Sabalenka at 18-1 is kind of interesting. I wonder if, the French Open, she's had success in some of these clay tournaments, but they were at altitude, they were indoors, in a little quicker conditions for her. I don't know if, like you said, on those cold, rainy days outside, if she's going to be able to, keep control of herself with the wind. But she's really intriguing. I think that she is, from a form perspective, just as good as any of these players. Andreescu's not playing. She has COVID. She's not coming. Like she hasn't announced that she's not coming. She's not coming. I promise.
Interesting. These are interesting. I feel like we should be able to find a number here that's just absolute smash city.
I wish there were some more names here. I would look for somebody like Kudermetova at a big number. She's going to be dangerous if she gets the right quarter. Somebody like Badosa has been very good. She's playing this week.
Now we're talking. Okay, because so some of these, because there could entirely be a breakout here. The French Open has sort of been a debutante kind of moment for a lot of these women. Swiatek, Ostapenko, obviously, although she never backed it up. We've seen it here before where someone's come from the 100-1 ballpark and made a run. I'm not seeing it on this list, honestly. This is maybe the only bettable number on this entire screen is Ash Barty, considering how we've broken this down.
And we'll come back to this, obviously, once we have some more names. And I think that's where it's going to be. You look on here like Coco Gauff 30-1. That's a joke. Svitolina 22-1. I'll take that bet. I'll give you 25-1. DM me. You can have as much as you want. Rybakina would be interesting. She started to put it together here a little bit, but didn't quite get through her second round match. I don't know if I like 30-1, but in the right draw, she is someone that I think has the potential. But I think you're right. Looking at these numbers, Barty is the only one I would back, and I'm probably going to go hunting around and see if there's even an 8-1 somewhere when we get done.
I bet you there is somewhere. All right, I'm going to look as well. This would be an interesting comeback for. I mean, Barty obviously took so much of last year off, but she was the defending champion heading into last year's French Open, and we know she's got the goods on the clay. So.
I think that just about does it for us. Before we leave, of course, we'd like to say thank you and let you know that our sponsor, WynnBET, they're great, Drew. They just give away free money. You go on the links there, you get a risk-free bet up to $500. I think it's up to $1,000 possibly still in Michigan and other places. There's links in the descriptions. You can find links on our Twitter page. Make sure that you go sign up for that. Maybe put it on one of those NBA bets we gave out. Knicks, maybe the Pacers if you're feeling saucy. Who knows? But make sure you check out WynnBET. Thanks again, Drew, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Man. Parlay.
Be sure to have you back. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just do the big, take everything we said, parlay it together, retire.
Yep.
And it's risk-free. You get it back if it loses. But thanks again. Of course, everybody, you can find Drew on Twitter at _whalecapper. All the great stuff he's doing there. I'm sure he'll be back again, and we will be back tomorrow. Myself, maybe even Andy. We'll see if he's up for it. But thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Cinco de Mayo? Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody.
It is.
Did you know that? I didn't know that.
It is Cinco de Mayo. That's right.
There you go, everybody. Go out and have a Pacifico and some tequila. See you tomorrow.